Kayla was 29 when the ground shifted beneath her life. She had thought heartbreak would come in quiet waves, maybe in arguments, maybe in small betrayals, but it didn't. It came loud, unexpected, and sharp. She was still clutching the note in her hand when Elias walked past her, eyes cold, jaw tight, already halfway out the door. The paper shook between her fingers, his words burned into her chest like fire. He was leaving, not with an explanation, not with love, but with secrets. She wanted to scream, to grab his arm, to demand answers, but her body froze. The door slammed shut, echoing through her apartment like a final verdict. She sat down on the edge of the couch, staring at the words written in quick, messy ink. Don't follow me. It's safer this way. Safer for who? For her. For him. For the child asleep in the other room who had no idea his mother's world had just been split open? She leaned forward, elbows on her knees, trying to breathe through the rush of panic. This wasn't the first time a man had left her, but it was the first time one left her carrying so much mystery. Elias had stepped into her life like a storm. She had been cautious at first. A single mother with scars doesn't hand out trust easily. But Elias, he had been different. Strong, patient, yet carrying a shadow in his eyes she could never fully name. Kayla pressed her hands to her face. She hated how fast she had let herself fall. She hated even more that she wasn't angry enough to erase him. The memory of his touch, the way he once looked at her like she was more than the sum of her mistakes, it clung to her even now, in the middle of this wreckage. She rose and paced the room. The note crumpled in her palm as if pressing harder would make sense bleed out of the ink. She thought about the first time they met, almost by accident, almost too ordinary to predict where it would lead. She had been sitting in the corner of a coffee shop, her laptop open but her mind miles away, when he had approached her table. Not with charm, not with rehearsed lines, but with a question about the book resting by her cup. His voice was calm, steady, the kind of voice that makes you look up even when you don't want to. She had laughed at his observation, and something about that moment cracked the weight she carried. No one else could do that. Not then. But now, staring at the door he had just walked out of, she felt stupid. What kind of woman lets herself get pulled in so fast? What kind of mother risks her son's stability for a man who disappears with scribbled warnings? Her chest ached with a mix of fear and shame. The night stretched heavy. She checked on her son, tucking the blanket closer to his shoulders, listening to the steady rhythm of his breathing. He was safe, at least for now. She wished she could hold on to that same certainty for herself. She wished she knew what Elias was running from, and why it had suddenly crashed into her life. Her phone buzzed. A message, no name, just numbers. She hesitated, pulse racing, before unlocking the screen. The words were short, clipped, urgent. Don't trust anyone. Not even the police. Her throat tightened. She didn't recognize the number, but something about the tone echoed Elias's warning. The room tilted around her. She sank back onto the couch, staring at the phone. Was this some twisted game? A threat? A test? Her mind spun with questions that had no answers. She thought about calling her friend, maybe confiding, but fear held her tongue. Who could she even trust? The night outside felt colder, pressing against the windows. She pulled the curtains shut, double-checked the lock, but it didn't ease the restless pounding in her chest. She was caught between disbelief and dread. If Elias had left to protect her, then danger was already near. If he had left because of betrayal, then she was nothing but a pawn in a bigger story she couldn't see. She tried to sleep, but every sound jolted her awake. The creak of the pipes, the hum of the fridge, the wind brushing against the glass. Each one felt like footsteps closing in. Her mind replayed the last look Elias gave her, cold but waited, like he wanted to say more but couldn't. She hated herself for longing to believe he still cared. By dawn, she hadn't slept at all. She brewed coffee with shaky hands, staring at the sunrise bleeding through thin curtains. The world looked the same, but hers had changed overnight. She felt like a stranger in her own life, standing in her kitchen, clutching a mug she couldn't taste. Her phone buzzed again. Same number. This time, check under the passenger seat. Don't wait. Her breath hitched. She glanced toward the window, heart pounding, certain someone was watching. For a moment, she froze, wondering if following the message would only drag her deeper. But curiosity cut through fear. She grabbed her keys, slipped on a jacket, and crept outside. The morning air was crisp, but it did nothing to cool the heat of dread in her chest. She unlocked the car, slid into the passenger seat, and reached underneath. Her fingers brushed against something rough, taped to the metal. She pulled it free. An envelope. Her hands trembled as she tore it open. Inside, stacks of cash. Too much to be innocent. Too heavy to be ignored. Her stomach dropped. She shoved it back into the envelope, shoved the envelope back under the seat, and slammed the car door shut. She stood in the driveway, staring at nothing, her mind screaming. Nothing about this was normal. Nothing about Elias was simple. And now, whether she liked it or not, she was part of something far larger than heartbreak. She pressed her hands against her mouth, trying to quiet the sob rising in her throat. She couldn't collapse. She had to hold it together. For her son. For herself. Whatever Elias had dragged her into, she had to survive it. And yet, deep inside, a dangerous thought whispered, what if she didn't just want to survive? What if she wanted to know the truth, no matter the cost? The envelope stayed under the seat, but it felt like it was burning through the metal, calling to her every time she walked past the car. Kayla tried to ignore it, tried to convince herself it wasn't her problem, but her mind wouldn't rest. Elias had left her with nothing but confusion, a son to protect, and now a bundle of money that screamed danger. By the afternoon, she couldn't take it anymore. She strapped her son into the back seat, buckled him in with shaky hands, and drove with no clear destination. Her stomach was tight, her throat dry. The city streets blurred past, but her focus was on the weight of what lay hidden under her passenger seat. She kept glancing into the rearview mirror, half expecting a car to be following. Every set of headlights made her pulse spike. Her boy was chattering about school, about a friend who had traded him a toy car for 2 cookies. She nodded, forced a smile, but her thoughts were far away. She envied him for his innocence, for not knowing that his mother was carrying secrets she never asked for. She wondered what Elias would say if he saw them like this, driving aimlessly, running from ghosts they couldn't see. At a red light, she reached into her bag and pulled out her phone. Her finger hovered over the screen, tempted to call him even though she knew he wouldn't answer. She still had his number saved, but she hesitated. What if calling only made things worse? What if the wrong person was listening? The light turned green. She pressed the gas, swallowing her frustration. She hated feeling powerless. She hated the thought that Elias had left her in the dark on purpose. Did he really think she would just sit quietly, pretend nothing happened? He should have known her better. She turned into a gas station, her chest tight. She told her son to stay buckled and ran inside. She grabbed a soda she didn't want, just to look normal, and stood in line. Behind her, 2 men in dark jackets stepped inside. She caught the sound of one muttering something about a pickup. Her pulse spiked. She forced herself to pay, grabbed her change, and walked quickly back to the car. Sliding into the driver's seat, She glanced at the men in the reflection of her side mirror. One of them looked in her direction. She didn't wait to see more. She turned the key, shifted into gear, and pulled away too fast. Her son asked what was wrong, why she looked scared, but she just told him to buckle tighter. Her phone buzzed again. Same number as before. The message read, "Go to the warehouse on Jefferson. Don't tell anyone. Don't be late." Her knuckles whitened around the steering wheel. Jefferson. She knew that street. The warehouses there were half abandoned, half used for shady deals no one talked about. Every instinct screamed not to go, but the urgency in the text twisted inside her. Maybe Elias was there. Maybe this was the only chance to understand. She drove in silence, her son finally dozing off in the back seat, unaware of the storm building around them. The roads grew emptier as she neared Jefferson, the buildings taller, shadows stretching longer. Her chest felt like it might burst. She parked a block away, cut the engine, and just sat there, her breath fogging the glass. She wanted to turn around. She wanted to drive far away and never look back. But curiosity, and something deeper, a need for answers, dragged her forward. She unbuckled carefully, leaned back, and touched her son's hair. He stirred but didn't wake. She whispered for him to stay asleep, that she'd be right back, though her own voice trembled with a lie she wanted to believe. The warehouse loomed ahead, its windows dark, its metal walls rusted with time. She walked slowly, her heartbeat echoing in her ears. At the side door, she hesitated before pushing it open. The hinges groaned. Inside, the air smelled of dust and oil. She stepped deeper into the shadows, scanning for movement. The silence pressed heavy. Then, a figure emerged from the far end. Tall, familiar, shoulders squared. Her breath caught. Elias. He looked different. Rougher. His eyes darted behind her before landing on her face. Relief flashed across his expression, but it was buried quickly under caution. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his voice low, urgent. Her hands clenched at her sides. "Then why send me?" "I didn't." The words hit her like a slap. Her chest tightened. If he hadn't texted her, then who had? Before she could answer, footsteps echoed from the opposite end of the warehouse. More than one pair. Elias's jaw tightened. He grabbed her arm, pulling her behind a stack of crates. "Stay quiet," he whispered. She pressed against the cold wood, her mind racing. Strangers entered. 2 men, maybe 3, their voices hushed but sharp. She couldn't make out all the words, but she caught enough. They were looking for Elias. They were looking for the money. Her stomach turned to ice. The envelope. It wasn't just a random bundle. It was theirs. And somehow, she had been dragged into the middle of it. Elias leaned close, his breath warm against her ear. "Listen to me. You need to take your son and leave. Forget you saw me. Forget all of this." Her throat burned. She wanted to scream at him, to demand why he left, why he lied, but the urgency in his tone silenced her. The footsteps drew closer. The men's voices grew louder. She heard the scrape of a gun against metal. Elias's grip tightened. "Go now." But she didn't move. She couldn't. Not when every nerve in her body told her she was already too deep to walk away. The men rounded the crates. Their eyes locked on Elias. One raised his weapon. The other sneered, pointing toward Kayla as if she were just another piece of leverage. Her blood turned cold. Elias stepped in front of her, shielding her without hesitation. And in that moment, Kayla understood. Whatever this was, whatever he had dragged her into, Elias wasn't just running to save himself. He was running to protect her. The realization twisted everything. Love, fear, betrayal. She felt it all at once, crashing through her chest like a tidal wave. And the night was just beginning. The men's footsteps echoed louder, their shadows stretching against the warehouse walls. Kayla's breath caught as one of them cocked his gun, the sound slicing through the air like a warning. Elias stood tall, his shoulders tense, every muscle ready. She pressed back against the crates, her nails digging into the wood, her mind screaming at her to run but her body frozen in place. "Looks like you brought company," one of the men sneered, his eyes flicking from Elias to her. "That wasn't very smart." Elias didn't move, didn't blink. His voice came out low, steady. "She has nothing to do with this." The man with the gun laughed, short and sharp. "Everyone has something to do with it. Especially when money's missing." Kayla's chest tightened. The envelope under her car seat flashed in her mind like a beacon. Her lips trembled, but she said nothing. If they knew she had it, she was already dead. Elias shifted, his body angled just enough to block their view of her. His voice was steel. "You want the money, you'll get it. But you don't touch her." One of the men smirked. "You think you're still calling shots? You walked away from us. That makes you a liability." Kayla's pulse pounded in her ears. She didn't understand everything, but she understood enough. Elias hadn't just been hiding. He had been running from these men. From whatever deal had gone wrong. From whatever betrayal had started this chain. The man with the gun raised it higher, aiming at Elias's chest. Kayla's breath hitched. Elias didn't flinch. He stared straight at them, calm but defiant, like a man who had made peace with danger long ago. Then a sound broke the tension, a distant horn from the street, long and sharp. The men jerked their heads, distracted for only a second. Elias seized the moment. He grabbed Kayla's wrist and pulled hard. They darted between the crates, running deeper into the warehouse as shouts erupted behind them. Her legs burned, her lungs screamed, but fear carried her faster than she thought possible. The sound of footsteps thundered behind them, each one closer, heavier. Elias led her through a side corridor, pushing open a rusted door that spilled them into the alley. Cold night air rushed against her face. "This way," Elias barked, gripping her hand tighter. They ran down the alley, the sharp echo of bullets ricocheting off the walls behind them. Kayla flinched at every shot, her heart hammering, her grip on Elias desperate. Her son. She thought of him sleeping in the car, innocent, unaware. The thought fueled her legs. They reached the street. The car was still there, parked under the dim light of a flickering lamp. Kayla's hands shook as she fumbled for her keys. Elias yanked open the passenger door and reached under the seat. His hand closed around the envelope. Kayla froze. "You knew it was there." Elias didn't look at her. "No time." He slid into the seat, pulled out the gun hidden in his jacket, and shoved the envelope into his bag. Kayla scrambled behind the wheel, her son stirring in the back seat, his small voice groggy with confusion. "Mom," he whispered. "Sure, it's okay, baby," she said, forcing calm into her voice as she turned the key and pressed the gas. The tires screeched against the pavement as the car lurched forward. In the mirror, two of the men burst into the street, one raising his gun. The crack of bullets rang out, glass shattering as one hit the rear window. Kayla ducked, swerving, her son crying out in fear. Elias twisted in his seat, firing back through the broken glass. The men dove for cover, the street flashing with sparks. Kayla's hands gripped the wheel so tight her knuckles ached. She turned sharply, the car skidding around a corner, the sound of sirens faint in the distance. Her chest heaved. She couldn't tell if the sirens were hope or another trap. They drove in silence for blocks, only the ragged sound of their breathing filling the car. Finally, Elias spoke, his voice rough. "You weren't supposed to find the envelope." Kayla's anger snapped, sharp and raw. "You weren't supposed to leave me with it." His jaw clenched, but he said nothing. She wanted to scream at him, to demand answers, but her son's soft sobs silenced her. She reached back with one hand, brushing his hair gently, whispering that it was okay, that she had him. Elias finally broke the silence. "There are things you don't know. Things I kept from you because it was safer." She let out a bitter laugh. "Safer? You think this is safe? My son just had bullets flying over his head. You left me with cash that people are willing to kill for. That's your version of safe." His eyes flicked to her, heavy with guilt, but he didn't argue. "You need to trust me now. If you don't, none of us make it out alive." Her hands shook on the wheel. She hated that part of her still wanted to trust him, still wanted to believe there was a reason behind the chaos. But another part of her burned with rage, with betrayal. "Why me?" she asked quietly. "Why drag me into this?" Elias's silence stretched, the hum of the engine filling the gap. Finally, he said, almost too soft to hear, "Because I had no one else. And because I couldn't walk away from you." Her throat tightened. She wanted to look at him, to search his eyes for truth, but she couldn't. She focused on the road, on keeping the car steady even though her whole body trembled. Minutes later, Elias directed her down a side street, toward an abandoned lot where shadows swallowed the corners. He told her to stop. She did, but her chest filled with unease. He motioned for her to stay quiet, then stepped out with the envelope. She watched him through the windshield, her son's small hand clutching hers from the back seat. Elias knelt by a broken fence post, pulling something from the dirt. A metal box, rusted but intact. He stuffed the envelope inside, closed it tight, and buried it again. When he returned to the car, his face was pale, his eyes darker than she had ever seen. "They won't find it here," he said. She swallowed hard. "And what happens when they come looking again?" He didn't answer right away. He just looked at her son, then back at her, his expression torn. Finally, he whispered, "Then we keep running." Kayla's chest ached. She wanted to scream, to cry, to demand the truth right now. But the words caught in her throat. She knew one thing for certain: her life would never return to what it had been before Elias walked back into it. As they pulled back onto the road, silence settled between them. Not peace, not trust, just silence. Kayla's thoughts churned. Secrets, danger, betrayal, love tangled in the mess of it all. She didn't know where this road would lead, but one truth anchored in her chest, heavy and unshakable. She was already too deep to walk away. The night should have been quiet, but her heart refused to settle. Kayla lay awake, staring at the ceiling of a motel room that smelled faintly of bleach and cigarette smoke. Elias had chosen it without explanation, saying only that it was off the main roads. Her son slept beside her, small body curled into the thin blanket, unaware of the storm still chasing them. She envied his innocence, the way children can surrender to sleep even when the world outside is broken. Elias sat by the window, his silhouette framed by the thin curtains. He hadn't spoken much since burying the envelope. His silence was a wall, keeping her questions out. But Kayla couldn't take the silence anymore. "You owe me answers," she whispered. He didn't turn his head. "Now isn't the time." Her chest burned with frustration. "When is the time, Elias? After they kill us? After my son grows up wondering why his mother dragged him into a mess she never understood. The words came sharper than she intended, but she didn't regret them. She was tired of fear eating away at her. She wanted truth, no matter how much it hurt. Elias finally turned, his eyes shadowed. "If I tell you everything, you won't sleep tonight." "I'm not sleeping anyway." For a long moment he studied her, then sighed, leaning back against the chair. His voice dropped low, as if the walls themselves were listening. "The money wasn't mine. It was theirs. Dirty money. I was supposed to deliver it, but I couldn't. Not after what I found out." Kayla's breath caught. Found out what? That they weren't just laundering cash. They were buying silence. Paying off people who knew too much. People who could bring them down if they ever talked. Her skin prickled. "And now they think you stole it." His jaw tightened. "I did steal it. But not for myself." She stared at him, her mind spinning. "Then why hide it under my seat?" "Because they'd never suspect you." The words hit like a blade. He had used her. Her and her son. Rage rose hot in her chest, battling with fear. She wanted to slap him, to scream, but her son stirred in his sleep, and she swallowed it down. "You risked my child," she whispered fiercely. Elias's face hardened. "I risked everything to keep you alive. Don't twist that." The silence that followed was thick, jagged. Kayla turned away, blinking back tears. She hated that her heart still pulled toward him even as her mind screamed betrayal. Hours later, the creak of the floorboards jolted her awake. She sat up quickly, eyes darting to the door. Elias was already standing, gun drawn. A shadow moved under the crack of light at the bottom of the door. Someone was outside. Kayla's pulse raced. She reached for her son, pulling him close. Elias raised a finger to his lips, signaling her to stay silent. Then, in one swift move, he flung the door open. The hallway was empty. Kayla's chest rose and fell in shallow breaths. What was that? Elias scanned the corridor, his grip firm on the weapon. "They're closer than I thought." They left the motel before dawn, moving quickly, quietly. Kayla carried her son half asleep to the car, wrapping him in the blanket. The sky was just beginning to pale, streaks of light breaking through the horizon. But the weight of danger followed them, heavy and unrelenting. On the road, Elias finally spoke again. "There's someone we need to see. Someone who can help." Kayla's voice was tight. "And I'm just supposed to trust that?" He glanced at her, his eyes steady. "If I wanted you dead, Kayla, it would have happened already." The bluntness of his words stung, but it silenced her. She drove in tense silence, gripping the wheel until her hands ached. Every mile felt longer, every car in the mirror suspicious. They pulled into a quiet diner off the highway hours later. The neon sign buzzed faintly, its red letters flickering. Inside, the air smelled of coffee and fried food. Kayla slid into a booth with her son while Elias scanned the room, his posture tense, his eyes always moving. A woman in her 50s approached their table, her hair tied back, her expression calm but guarded. She slid into the seat across from Elias without asking. "You're late," she said. Elias leaned forward. "We had company." Kayla's heart thudded. She looked between them, trying to piece together their connection. The woman's gaze shifted to her, sharp, assessing. "This her?" the woman asked. Kayla bristled. "Her who?" Elias cut in. "She's not involved." The woman smirked, unconvinced. "Too late for that." Kayla's chest tightened. She hated being spoken about like she wasn't there, hated the secrets spinning around her. I want the truth. All of it. Now. The woman studied her for a long moment, then leaned back. Truth is dangerous. But so is ignorance. You're already marked, sweetheart. You might as well know what you're running from. Kayla's throat went dry. Her hands shook under the table. She wanted to scream that she never asked for this, that she just wanted a normal life for her son. But part of her already knew, normal was gone. Elias's hand brushed hers under the table, steady, grounding. His voice was firm. Tell her. The woman's eyes didn't soften, but her words did. The people chasing you, they're not just criminals. They're connected. To corporations. To officials. To people who don't like loose ends. Kayla's stomach dropped. It was bigger than she imagined. Bigger than Elias. Bigger than all of them. The woman slid a folded paper across the table. This is the address of someone who can get you out. But you'll only get one chance. Elias pocketed it, his expression unreadable. Kayla stared at him, her heart twisting. She wanted to trust him, but trust had become a luxury she couldn't afford. Her son tugged her sleeve, whispering that he was hungry. She forced a smile, ordering him pancakes, her hands shaking as she poured syrup. She watched him eat, small and happy in the middle of chaos, and it broke her. She turned back to Elias, her voice low, fierce. If anything happens to him, I'll never forgive you. Elias's gaze held hers, steady and unflinching. That's why I'm doing this. To make sure nothing does. The woman excused herself, leaving them with more questions than answers. Kayla stared out the window, the weight of the unknown pressing down. She had walked into Elias's storm, and now there was no way out but through. As they prepared to leave, her phone buzzed again. Same number. Her chest tightened as she read the words, "You're already too late." Her fingers trembled around the screen. Elias leaned over, eyes narrowing. The message disappeared before he could see more. Kayla's stomach sank. She realized then that someone wasn't just watching Elias. They were watching her. Kayla's grip on the phone tightened until her knuckles turned white. She wanted to hurl it across the diner, to break it and pretend the message never came. But pretending wouldn't save her. Whoever was behind those words knew exactly where she was and wanted her to know it. Elias leaned closer, his voice low. What did it say? Her throat tightened. For a moment she considered lying, keeping it to herself. But the weight was too heavy. It said, I'm already too late. Elias's jaw clenched, his eyes scanning the diner, every face suddenly suspicious. Then we move faster. Kayla felt anger boil under her fear. Move faster? Elias, this isn't a game. Someone is watching me. Not you. Me. That means I'm the target too. He met her gaze with steel in his eyes. You were the target the moment you opened that envelope. The truth cut deep. She thought back to the day she found the money under her seat. She should have walked away, thrown it out, gone to the police, anything but what she did. But now the past was welded to her future, and she couldn't peel them apart. Her son tapped the table, syrup dripping from his chin. Mom, can we go home now? Her chest ached. Home felt like a dream she couldn't give him. She brushed his hair back gently, forcing a smile. Soon, baby. Soon. But deep inside, she knew home might never be safe again. When they left the diner, the sunlight was sharp, almost blinding. Kayla clutched her son's hand tighter than usual, her eyes darting over the parking lot. A man in a dark jacket leaned against a car across the street, smoking. He looked casual, but something in the way his eyes lingered on them set her nerves on fire. "Elias," she whispered, without moving her lips. "I see him," Elias said, steering her toward the car without breaking stride. His hand pressed lightly against her back, firm but controlled. The moment they got inside, the man flicked his cigarette to the ground and started walking toward them. "Go," Elias said. Kayla didn't hesitate. She turned the key, her hands trembling, and floored the gas. The tires screeched as the car lurched forward, leaving the man behind. But in the mirror, she caught the flash of his phone lifting to take a picture. Her chest tightened. They weren't just being chased. They were being tracked. The next hours blurred into endless miles of highway. Kayla's mind was a storm. Every car behind them felt too close, every glance from strangers felt loaded. Her son dozed in the back seat, oblivious, and she envied his peace. Finally, Elias told her to take an exit into a small town that looked half abandoned. They pulled into a run-down gas station. Kayla frowned as Elias got out, glancing around before opening the trunk. "What are you doing?" she asked through the window. "Switching plates," he said. Her eyes widened. "You came prepared for this?" He didn't answer, which was answer enough. When he climbed back in, Kayla stared at him. "You've done this before, haven't you?" His silence was heavy. The realization made her stomach twist. She wanted to believe he was just a man caught in something too big, but maybe he was more. Maybe he wasn't running from danger. Maybe he was part of it. "Tell me who you really are," she demanded. His eyes stayed on the road as he pulled back onto the highway. Someone who made mistakes. Someone trying to fix them. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. By dusk, they reached the address the woman from the diner had given them. It was an old farmhouse, isolated, surrounded by fields. The windows glowed with warm light, almost inviting. But Kayla felt no comfort. Elias parked a distance away. "We walk from here." Her stomach dropped. "Why?" "Because if they followed us, I'll know before we step inside." He got out, scanning the horizon, then motioned for her to grab her son. The three of them crossed the field, the grass brushing their legs, the silence pressing in. Halfway to the house, Kayla's son tugged her hand. "Mom, I'm scared." She crouched, pulling him close. "I know, baby. But we're together. That's what matters." Her words were meant to comfort him, but as she spoke them, she realized she didn't fully believe them herself. At the porch, Elias knocked 3 times, then waited. The door creaked open, revealing a man in his 60s with sharp eyes and a steady posture. "You brought trouble to my door," the man said flatly. Elias's voice was calm. "I brought you leverage." Kayla's heart skipped. Leverage? What leverage? The man's eyes shifted to her, then to her son, and something unspoken passed between him and Elias. Kayla's pulse quickened. What does that mean? What did you just promise him? Neither man answered right away. The silence stretched, suffocating, until finally the older man said, "Bring them inside. We don't have much time." Kayla's legs felt weak as she stepped into the house. Her son clung to her, and for the first time, she wondered if following Elias had been the biggest mistake of her life. Because whatever deal Elias had just hinted at, whatever leverage he meant, it wasn't just about him anymore. It was about her and her child. And she realized with a chill that Elias might be willing to trade more than secrets to keep them alive. The farmhouse smelled of old wood and damp earth. The boards creaked under Kayla's steps as if warning her to turn back. She clutched her son's hand, guiding him through the dim hallway while Elias walked ahead with the older man. They spoke in hushed tones, words too low for her to catch, but the weight of them pressed against her chest. The living room was small, lit only by a single lamp that cast shadows across faded wallpaper. The man motioned for them to sit. Kayla perched on the edge of the couch, her son curling into her side, his eyes wide. Elias stood near the window, peeking through the curtains like he expected headlights to appear any second. Finally, the older man turned toward her. His eyes were sharp, unreadable. "Do you know what you're carrying?" Her stomach knotted. She thought of the envelope under her seat, the stacks of bills, the endless questions that came with it. "Money," she said carefully. He gave a dry chuckle. "Money is the smallest part of it." Her blood ran cold. She wanted to demand answers, to shout at both men until they gave her the truth, but fear pinned her voice. She looked to Elias instead. "Tell me. Now." Elias didn't meet her eyes. His jaw flexed, his hand tightening around the curtain fabric. "It's not just cash. It's proof. Documents. Names. Accounts. Enough to bring down people who don't forgive." Kayla's throat closed. She thought of the men in the diner, of the cigarette flicked onto the pavement, of the text message that told her she was already too late. Proof. Blackmail. Blood bait. She had been sitting with it in her car like it was just paper. Her son shifted beside her, sensing her fear. She wrapped her arm around him, holding him tighter. "So what now? You expect me to keep it? To hide it while people hunt us?" Elias turned then, his eyes shadowed but steady. "No. I expect you to survive. That's why you need to give it to him." Kayla blinked. "Him?" She glanced at the older man. "You mean him?" The man's expression didn't change. "You're not built for this fight. You'll be eaten alive. Let me carry it." Her pulse quickened. Every instinct told her not to trust him. She didn't even know his name. Yet Elias seemed certain, and that unsettled her even more. "And what do you get out of it?" she asked. His lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. "A chance to settle old debts." Her skin prickled. Debts. Deals. Leverage. Every word felt like a noose tightening. She shook her head. "No. You're not dragging me into whatever history you two share. My son and we're leaving." She stood, pulling her boy to his feet, but Elias stepped in front of the door. His voice was quiet but firm. "Kayla, if you walk out now, you won't make it past the county line." Her chest heaved. Anger sparked through her fear. "You don't get to decide that for me. You left me once already, Elias. You don't get to keep me caged just because you're scared." For a moment, silence hung heavy between them. Then his face softened, regret slipping through his guard. "I didn't leave because I stopped loving you. I left because they threatened you. Both of you. And I thought, if I disappeared, they'd forget you existed." Her throat burned. The words hit hard, almost cruel in their tenderness. She wanted to believe him, wanted to let the explanation soothe the wound he left behind. But the danger still stood between them, sharper than ever. The older man broke the silence with a cough. "Enough of the sentiment. If you're staying here tonight, rules are simple. Phones off. Lights low. And if you hear dogs, don't open the door." Kayla's stomach twisted. Dogs. He didn't answer, just walked toward the kitchen, leaving the weight of his warning behind. Elias finally stepped aside, letting her sit again. Her son laid his head in her lap, eyelids drooping. She stroked his hair, watching him drift to sleep in a world that offered no peace. Hours dragged by in uneasy silence. Elias sat at the window, eyes never leaving the darkness outside. Kayla lay on the couch with her son curled against her, the rhythm of his breathing keeping her tethered. She wanted to sleep, but fear gnawed too deeply. Somewhere after midnight, a sound stirred her. At first, she thought it was wind rattling the shutters. Then she heard it again, low, steady, closer. The faint but distinct sound of barking. Her breath caught. She glanced at Elias, who was already standing, muscles tense. The older man emerged from the kitchen, a rifle in his hands. Kayla clutched her son tighter. "What is it?" she whispered. The man's voice was grim. "Hunters." The barking grew louder, joined by the crunch of tires on gravel. Headlights swept across the fields, slicing through the darkness. Kayla's heart pounded as the glow neared the house. Elias crouched low, signaling for silence. The older man took position by the door, rifle raised. Kayla pressed her son's face into her shoulder, whispering prayers she didn't even believe. The dogs barked wildly now, circling the house. Shadows moved across the windows. Heavy boots crunched against the porch steps. Then, a voice called out. Deep, commanding, laced with menace. "We know you're in there. Hand it over, and no one gets hurt." Kayla's blood turned to ice. Her son whimpered, his small hands clutching at her shirt. She held him tighter, wishing she could shield him from all of it. Elias's eyes met hers across the room. In that look, she saw the truth. This was no bluff. If they didn't decide fast, the night would end in blood. The man outside pounded the door once, hard enough to shake the frame. Last chance. Kayla's chest heaved. She looked at Elias, at the older man, at her sleeping boy clinging to life in her arms. And she realized the next move they made could cost them everything. The pounding on the door rattled through Kayla's chest. Her son stirred in her arms, whimpering, his small voice muffled against her shoulder. She tried to hush him, but her own fear bled into the sound. Elias crouched low near the window, his hand raised, signaling for silence. The older man by the door tightened his grip on the rifle, his face a mask of stone. Outside, the barking of the dogs grew sharper, the sound of claws scratching at wood and gravel. Kayla's heart hammered so loud she was certain the men outside could hear it. The voice called again, steady and cold. "We know you have it. Don't make us take it." Her son's breathing hitched. She pressed her lips to his hair, whispering, "It's okay, baby. I've got you." But she didn't believe her own words. The older man looked at Elias. A silent exchange passed between them, years of history compressed into a glance. Then he jerked his head toward the back. Elias nodded, slipping across the room with a smoothness that made Kayla realize he had done this before. Elias crouched beside her. His whisper was firm, urgent. "When I say, we run. Don't stop. Don't look back." Kayla's chest tightened. Where? Anywhere but here. She wanted to demand more, to scream that she deserved answers, but the pounding on the door cut her off. The wood splintered, cracks spreading under the force. Dust rained from the frame. The older man raised the rifle, his voice low. "Go. Now." Elias grabbed Kayla's arm, pulling her toward the kitchen. She clutched her son, stumbling after him, her legs shaking. Behind them, the front door gave way with a deafening crash. Shouts filled the air. Boots thundered on the floorboards. Kayla's pulse exploded. She ran faster, clutching her boy so tightly he gasped. Elias shoved open the back door, the night air rushing in cold and sharp. They bolted into the field, the grass whipping at their legs. Gunfire cracked behind them. The sound tore through the dark, Each shot a whip across Kayla's nerves. She ducked low, shielding her son, her lungs burning with every step. Elias grabbed her hand, pulling her faster, his grip iron. The dogs were loose now, their barks slicing through the night. She heard them gaining, the heavy thud of paws closing the distance. Her breath came in ragged bursts. "Keep going," Elias shouted. She wanted to scream back that she couldn't, that her legs were failing, but then she felt her son's small arms clinging tighter to her neck. That was enough. She pushed harder, tears streaking her cheeks as she ran into the endless dark. The field seemed to stretch forever. Behind them, the house was swallowed in chaos, shouts, gunfire, barking. But ahead was only emptiness, and emptiness wasn't safety. Finally, Elias yanked her toward a line of trees at the edge of the property. They crashed into the woods, branches scraping their skin, shadows swallowing them whole. The dogs howled, but the trees muffled the sound. They stumbled deeper, tripping over roots and rocks. Kayla nearly fell, but Elias caught her, steadying her before pushing forward again. Her son whimpered, his face buried against her neck, his fear seeping into her bones. When they finally stopped, Kayla collapsed against a tree, gasping for air. Elias bent double, his chest heaving. For a moment, there was only the sound of their breaths and the distant chaos still raging at the farmhouse. Kayla's voice cracked. What just happened? Who were they? Elias wiped sweat from his brow, his face grim. People who don't ask twice. People who don't leave witnesses. Her stomach churned. She rocked her son gently, trying to calm his trembling. The weight of what Elias said settled over her like a shroud. The older man hadn't followed them. Kayla realized it then, a chill running down her spine. He had stayed behind. He had chosen to fight so they could flee. Her chest tightened. She wanted to believe he'd survive, but the silence from the farmhouse told her otherwise. Elias straightened, scanning the darkness between the trees. We can't stop. They'll send more. Kayla's voice broke. We can't keep running forever. His gaze met hers, steady and sharp. We won't. But until I know who betrayed us, we don't have a choice. The word betrayed hit her like ice. She wanted to press, to demand answers, but the fear in his eyes told her the truth was worse than she imagined. Her son stirred, whispering sleepily, Mom, are we safe now? Her heart cracked. She kissed his forehead, whispering, Yes, baby. We're safe. But even as the words left her lips, she knew they were a lie. Elias leaned close, his voice low. Tomorrow we move again. But tonight, we stay quiet. Kayla nodded, though dread twisted inside her. The forest pressed in, the dark alive with unseen eyes. She held her son tighter, her body aching, her mind spinning. And as the night deepened, a single thought clawed at her chest. If they had been found once, they could be found again. She closed her eyes, listening to the rustle of the trees, the distant echoes of dogs still searching. And in the silence between sounds, she felt it, the certainty that someone, somewhere, already knew exactly where they were heading next. The night pressed heavy around them. Kayla couldn't shake the feeling that the trees were hiding eyes, that the darkness itself was breathing against her neck. Her son slept in her lap, his small chest rising and falling, and she envied the way he could drift away even with danger at their heels. Elias sat a few feet away, back against a tree, scanning the shadows with the patience of a man who'd done this before. Kayla broke the silence. You said someone betrayed you. Who? His jaw flexed. Someone I trusted. She studied his face, the way his eyes didn't flinch. And now they want me dead because of your secrets? His gaze softened, though his voice stayed steady. No, Kayla. They want you dead because you matter to me. That makes you leverage. Her chest tightened. A part of her wanted to scream, to tell him she never asked to matter to him anymore. But another part, the one that still remembered his laugh and the way he held her when life broke apart, felt something dangerous stir inside her. Before she could answer, a rustle broke through the woods. Elias rose silently, pressing a finger to his lips. Kayla froze, holding her son close, listening. The sound was faint but deliberate. Footsteps. Elias disappeared into the trees, moving with quiet precision. Kayla's pulse thundered in her ears. She wanted to call out, to beg him not to leave her alone, but then a branch snapped, and Elias returned, dragging a man by the collar. The stranger was young, barely more than a kid, his face pale, his hands shaking. Elias shoved him down into the dirt. "Who sent you?" The boy stammered, glancing at Kayla, then back at Elias. They know she has it. They told me to follow. Just to make sure you don't get too far." Kayla's stomach dropped. "Who are they?" The boy shook his head violently. "If I tell you, I'm dead." Elias leaned down, his voice a low growl. "You're already dead if you don't." The boy's eyes welled. He blurted a name, one Kayla didn't recognize, but Elias stiffened. His grip tightened around the boy's shirt. Kayla's voice cut through. "What does that mean? Who is he?" Elias didn't answer. He just shoved the boy away, ordering him to run. The kid scrambled into the trees and vanished. Kayla stood, trembling. "You're not going to tell me, are you?" Elias's eyes were dark, unreadable. "Not yet." The answer burned, but before she could press, her son stirred, whispering sleepily. She held him closer, her anger buried under exhaustion. The next morning, they moved again, following back roads that seemed to stretch into nowhere. Kayla's body ached, but her mind churned more. The name the boy had spoken lingered in her ears, a ghost she couldn't place. By midday, they reached an old motel on the edge of a forgotten town. Elias insisted they stop. Kayla carried her son inside, laying him on the bed. The thin curtains barely kept out the sun, and the room smelled of mildew, but it felt safer than the woods. For the first time in days, she let herself breathe. But safety was a lie. That evening, as her son slept, Kayla stepped into the bathroom and saw it, a small blinking light in the vent. A camera. Her blood went cold. She rushed out, her voice sharp. "Elias, we've been watched." He moved fast, yanking the vent open, crushing the device in his hand. His face hardened, and he muttered something under his breath that sounded like a curse. Kayla's knees buckled. "They already know where we are." Elias grabbed their things. "Then we don't give them time to act." But before they could leave, the phone in the room rang. The sound froze them both. One ring. Two. Three. Elias didn't move. Kayla stared at the phone, dread curling in her stomach. On the fourth ring, she picked it up, her voice barely a whisper. "Hello." A pause. Then a voice she hadn't heard in years. "Kayla. It's me." Her hand shook. Her chest constricted. It was her brother. The one she thought was dead. Chapter 9, 1,100 words. Her breath hitched. No, you're gone. I buried you." The voice on the other end was calm, almost tender. "You buried what they wanted you to bury. But I'm alive. And I've been waiting for you." Kayla's knees threatened to give. Elias snatched the phone from her hand, his tone sharp. "How did you find this line?" The voice chuckled, cold. "Elias. Still trying to play the savior. You can't keep her safe. You couldn't years ago, and you can't now. Kayla's chest burned. If this is really you, prove it. Tell me something only my brother would know. Silence. Then, the night of the storm, when Dad locked you outside, I covered you with my coat. You cried into it so hard, it smelled like salt for weeks. Her breath broke. No one else could know that. Tears blurred her vision. Why? Why hide from me? Why let me think you were dead? His voice hardened. Because the people Elias works for wanted it that way. And now you're paying the price for trusting him. Elias's jaw clenched, but he said nothing. Kayla's heart twisted, torn between grief, shock, and rage. Her brother's voice softened again. Come to me, Kay. I can end this for you. But you have to come alone. The line went dead. The silence afterward was deafening. Kayla dropped into a chair, shaking. Elias reached for her, but she pulled away. You knew. You knew he was alive. Elias's silence was confirmation enough. Her anger flared. How could you keep that from me? He was my family. My blood. Elias's voice cracked with urgency. Because he's not the same man you lost. Whatever's left of him. It isn't safe. Her tears burned hot. You don't get to decide that for me. If he's alive, I need to see him. Her son stirred in the bed, and she swallowed her sobs, brushing his hair gently. But deep inside, a seed had already been planted. She would find her brother. With or without Elias. Chapter 10, 1,200 words. The next day felt like walking through a dream. Kayla's mind replayed her brother's voice again and again, each word digging deeper. Elias drove in silence, his jaw tight, his eyes never leaving the road. Finally, Kayla broke. Where is he? Elias didn't answer. She leaned forward, her voice shaking. Where is my brother? He exhaled slowly. Last I heard, he was working with them. The same people chasing us now. Her stomach dropped. Working with them. No. He wouldn't. Elias's eyes flicked to her, heavy with pity. He already has. The truth felt like a blade. But her heart refused to believe it. That night, as Elias slept in the driver's seat, Kayla slipped out of the car. She walked into the gas station, her hands trembling, and asked the clerk for a phone. With shaking fingers, she dialed the number that had called the motel. It rang once before he answered. Kayla. Her chest squeezed. Tell me where you are. He gave her an address. And before she could even think, she agreed. When she returned to the car, Elias was awake, suspicion in his eyes. Where'd you go? Bathroom, she lied. But the lie sat heavy on her tongue. The next day, she guided them subtly toward the address, her heart pounding with every mile. Elias didn't notice at first, but when she directed him to turn down an isolated road, his hands tightened on the wheel. Where are we going? Kayla stared straight ahead. To the truth. Chapter 11, 1,300 words. The abandoned factory loomed like a skeleton, its windows shattered, its walls scarred by rust. Kayla's breath came in shallow bursts as they pulled up. Her son stirred awake, confused, and she hushed him gently, her own fear bleeding into her tone. Elias gripped her arm before she could step out. Don't do this. He's not the brother you remember. Her voice trembled, but her resolve didn't. He's still mine. She walked into the building, her son's hand in hers. The air smelled of oil and dust, the echo of their footsteps carrying through the vast space. And then, he appeared. Her brother. Alive. He stepped out from the shadows, older, harder, but undeniably him. Her heart lurched. Tears blurred her vision as she dropped to her knees, pulling her son close, whispering, "It's him. It's really him." Her brother's smile was sharp, almost cruel. "Hello, little sister." Elias stepped in behind her, his body tense, his hand hovering near his side. "Don't get too close." Kayla turned, her voice breaking. "He's my brother. Don't you dare." But even as she said it, something in her brother's eyes unsettled her. The warmth she remembered was gone, replaced with something colder. He crouched in front of her son, studying him. "So this is the boy. My nephew." Kayla's chest tightened. She pulled her son closer, her instincts screaming. Her brother's smile widened. "He looks just like you did at his age. But he has his father's eyes." Her breath caught. "What do you mean?" His gaze flicked to Elias, then back to her. "Did he never tell you?" Elias froze. Kayla's stomach twisted. Her brother leaned close, his whisper sharp as a knife. "That child isn't just yours, Kayla. He's his too." Kayla's world spun. The air shattered with the sound of her son's cry, the echo of betrayal cracking open like thunder. Her breath wouldn't settle. The words her brother had spoken still tore through her chest like glass. She looked at Elias, searching his face, desperate for him to deny it, to tell her it was another one of her brother's cruel games. But Elias didn't speak. His silence was heavier than any answer. Her brother smirked, standing tall in the dim light of the factory. "There it is. The truth he never wanted you to know." Kayla shook her head, holding her son tighter. "You're lying. You're trying to twist me against him." But her brother's voice was calm, steady, almost soothing. "Am I? Look at him, Kay. You see it in his face, don't you? The guilt." Her son's wide eyes looked up at her, full of confusion and fear. He didn't understand the words, but he felt the storm in the room. Kayla's heart ached for him, for the innocence that was shattering before her eyes. Elias finally spoke, his voice low, rough. "It doesn't matter how he came into this world. What matters is that he's yours. You raised him. You kept him alive." Kayla's chest heaved, her throat burning. "But you knew. All this time, you knew." "I kept it from you because it would have broken you," Elias said, his eyes locked on hers. "And I swore I'd protect you from that." Her brother laughed, cold and bitter. "Protect her? You used her. You left her with nothing but your mess. And now you want her to believe you're the hero? You're a parasite, Elias. And I'm the only one who can save her now." Kayla felt pulled in two directions. The brother she had mourned for years, alive but sharp-edged and twisted. The man she once loved, standing in front of her with secrets and scars, but also the one who had kept her alive in the darkest nights. Her chest ached with the weight of it. Her brother stepped closer, extending a hand to her son. "Come with me, Kayla. Leave him behind. You'll finally be safe. I promise." Kayla pulled her boy back. "Don't touch him." Her brother's smile thinned. "So you're choosing him? After everything?" Before Kayla could answer, Elias moved, stepping between them. "She's not going anywhere with you." The air cracked like a whip. In that instant, Kayla knew there would be no peace, no simple ending. Her brother's hand slid to the inside of his jacket, and Elias tensed. Kayla's scream cut through the silence. "Stop. Both of you." But it was too late. A flash of steel. A roar of pain. The sound of her son's sobs echoing through the hollow factory as the fight began. The clash was brutal. Kayla grabbed her son, ducking behind a wall as Elias and her brother fought. The sound of fists, grunts, the shattering of old wood and rusted pipes filled the air. She wanted to look away, but her eyes kept finding Elias's face, bloodied, determined, refusing to give in. Her brother fought like a man who had nothing left to lose. Each swing carried years of rage, betrayal, and bitterness. Kayla's hands shook as she tried to shield her son's eyes. "Don't look, baby, don't look." But then she heard it, Elias's voice, ragged but firm. "Kayla, run." She froze. She didn't want to leave him. But her son clutched her shirt, his little voice pleading, "Mom, please." Her legs moved before her heart caught up. She ran, carrying her boy out into the night, tears burning her cheeks. The factory's broken windows glowed behind her, the fight still raging inside. She stumbled into the dirt, her chest heaving, her heart torn. Every part of her wanted to run back, to pull Elias out, to drag her brother into the light and make sense of it all. But she couldn't risk her son's life. Minutes passed like hours until finally, silence fell. The kind of silence that felt like the end of something. And then, footsteps. Elias emerged, bloodied and broken, but alive. His eyes met hers, heavy with pain. He didn't speak, just reached for her hand. She hesitated, but then her son slipped his small hand into Elias's too. For a fleeting moment, it felt like maybe they had survived. But survival always came with a cost. The days that followed blurred together. They found another hiding place, a small cabin tucked away by a river. Kayla tried to give her son some sense of normal, cooking simple meals, brushing his hair, telling him stories to chase away the shadows. But inside, she was unraveling. Elias healed slowly, his body marked with bruises and scars, his eyes carrying something darker than before. He didn't talk about the fight. He didn't say what had happened to her brother. And Kayla didn't ask. Not yet. But the silence between them grew heavier. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the river in fire, Kayla finally asked, "Is he dead?" Elias didn't look at her. "He's gone." Her chest ached at the answer. Part of her wanted to scream, to demand details, to claw the truth out of him. Another part wanted to believe that gone meant something else, that maybe her brother was out there, waiting, watching. But deeper still was the question she couldn't silence. Was her son truly Elias's? The doubt gnawed at her, day and night. She studied the boy's face, his laugh, his eyes, searching for pieces of Elias in him. Sometimes she saw it. Sometimes she didn't. One night, when the boy was asleep, she turned to Elias. "Tell me the truth. Is he yours?" Elias's jaw tightened. He didn't answer right away. Finally, he whispered, "Does it change how much you love him?" Kayla's throat closed. "No. But it changes everything else." His eyes met hers, filled with something she couldn't name. "Then maybe you don't need the answer." She turned away, tears burning her cheeks. She hated him for that answer. She hated him for the secrets. But she also hated herself for still needing him, for still feeling the pull of the man who had ruined her life and saved it all at once. The boy stirred in his sleep, murmuring softly, and Kayla kissed his forehead. She told herself she would protect him no matter what, even if it meant standing against Elias, even if it meant chasing ghosts of a brother she couldn't bury twice. Because this wasn't the end. It couldn't be. And as the night closed in, Kayla knew the real fight hadn't even started.